Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta says government this year will launch the Planting for Food and Jobs. The campaign, he says, is designed to encourage all citizens, both urban and rural, to take up farming as a full or part-time activity.
Mr. Speaker, the government recognizes agriculture as the main anchor of the country's economy. Unfortunately, we have witnessed a steady decline in the sector, and production levels have fallen consistently over the years. In the medium term, we intend to modernize the sector to improve productivity and achieve food security and profitability for our farmers. Mr. Speaker, in 2017, government will launch the Planting for Food and Jobs campaign. The campaign is designed to encourage all citizens, both urban and rural, to take up farming as a full part-time activity. It is intended to structure it along the lines of the SYL Operation Feed Yourself program in the 1970s. The campaign will involve the production of maize, rice, soybean, sorghum, and vegetables. Other crops will be adopted in subsequent years. The campaign will be anchored on 5 pillars, namely provision of improved seeds, supply of fertilizers, provision of dedicated extension services, marketing, and e-agriculture and monitoring. This initiative, Mr. Speaker, is expected to increase the production of maize by 30% from the current production levels, rice by 49%, soybean by 25%, and sorghum by 28%. This will create 750,000 jobs in both direct and indirect employment. The ministry will import improved seeds to augment any shortfall for the Planting for Food and Jobs campaign. Mr. Speaker, in 2017, the ministry will continue the fertilizer subsidy program to help increase the productivity of our farmers. To this effect, we intend to distribute nationwide an expected 180,000 metric tons of subsidized fertilizer.
And a bit to delve more into this very topic, I have 2 gentlemen in the studio. Edward Kaira, he is the General Secretary of the General Agriculture Workers Union, and also Charles Nyaba, Programs Officer, Peasant Farmers Association. Good afternoon, thanks for your time. Now let me start with you, Edward, and I'm also going to have your take on it, Charles. Yeah. What do you make of this very policy?
Well, let me say good afternoon once more to many Ghanaians, and particularly the General Agricultural Workers Union and the working people of this country. A policy by itself, Planting for Food and Jobs, is on its own good, but it needs to be linked up with other policies to make it complete, because we have an integrated economy of the various sectors. Even agriculture as a sector cannot stand on its own. It must have strong linkages with the other sectors of the economy so that there can be mutual benefits and there's synergy in it. So the policy needs to be linked up, and you can see that there's a comprehensive approach to it. The policy by itself, Planting for Food and Jobs, then you have the one district, one factory, then you also have one village, one dam. All those things work together, and then to a large extent the policy on taxes also have a strong bearing on what on the success of the Planting for Food and Jobs at the end of the day. Okay.
Now Charles, what's your take on this? Yeah, what do you make of the policy?
Before I start, let me say good afternoon to the smallholder farmers across the country, and then yourself. Before I came here, normally we try to look at the position of our members when policies like this are put out there. I try to just put it on our platform to get a reaction of what members feel, because they are the real practitioners. And there are a lot of messages here. If there's time and you want me to read them on air, I will do that. To us, it's good for Planting for Food and Jobs. But our constraint has to do with what the minister announced and what is contained in the budget. If you look at the 2017, the budget that has just been read, the total amount that is allocated to the Ministry of Food and Agriculture is 450 million Ghana cedis. And out of that, 421 million is devoted for Fertilizer Subsidy and Mechanization Center. And just like Karwe said, agriculture sector is a full package. So if you want to address the problem and you'll be able to plan for food and jobs, then you have to address all the chains within the sector. In this case, we are putting more than 60% of what we are going to use for the entire sector on only 2 items, fertilizer subsidy and mechanization services. What happened to the other sectors of the chain? One major problem that we have, which I think if you don't take a critical look, could affect this planting for food and jobs, is if you don't address the issue of marketing. Because if a farmer produces today and he's not able to get market, he's not able to preserve it well, the following year that farmer will not produce because we respond to demand. So if there's no demand, then you will not go. Even consumers, if you are not able to produce to meet the taste of consumers, then consumers will prefer to rather buy from foreign countries. So I always want us to reflect back on how EU and US developed through agriculture. I was just trying to do some small trend analysis on how they've been able to do it. What they did was to introduce what they call Farm Bill. And this one was backed by a huge budget. In 2010, US budgeted 345 billion for the agriculture sector. And out of that, 46 billion US dollars went into direct support to farmers. Let's look at the whole budget. How much is put to support farmers? It's something that we can look at.
Charles, let me hold you there. And Edward, linking to what Charles mentioned, now the issue has been one of the major challenges favorable weather pattern, mechanized agriculture, which is now the way forward. Do you see this policy solving that problem? Because the minister mentioned that rural and urban persons are all supposed to be involved. Do you see this solving that challenge?
Well, we have been made to understand that this policy is a replica of what has happened in the 1970s. In the past, and then it was successful. So why can't it be successful today? But the difference here is that they are implemented at different times and with different challenges. By then, the economy was completely closed, and then also had a strong military leadership, you know, where before you could import, you needed import license and then quota to do so. Today, our economy is polarized. I mean, in the sense that it's over-liberalized. There's already huge stock of produce in terms of import into the country. Now, the policy is based on the assumption that there's a shortfall in production. So when you produce, then the market is already there. But the market is not there. It's a very fictitious, it is a fictitious one. Because that market you are anticipating is already occupied by imports. So if you want to still continue with this policy, then you must have a class of policies that also deal with the imports, you know, to constrain imports, to reduce the flow of imports, to free space within the domestic market for it. Now, they are saying that they are linking it to the school feeding system. That is one area of freezing the market for it, because that's government expenditure. Nevertheless, we also have to appreciate that we can use West African market to deal with it. But it's not just about the mere existence of the ECOWAS market, but policies must be put in place to be able to access that market. Now, the question about mechanization, rainfall, and so on, that is, you have to mechanize where you have to mechanize. It's not everything you need to mechanize, you know. And if you look at the fact that we have got 80% of domestic production is done by smallholder farmers. You know, what type of mechanization are you going to apply on them? You know, introduce to those people. You need to introduce an appropriate mechanization system. Now, the rainfall, we have always been talking that, of course, without rainfall, there's no agriculture. And globally, you know, agriculture takes about 70% of water. So the same thing applies here. Now, we need to embark on irrigation so much. And then they will say that, yes, but that is why we are introducing the one village, one dam. But I have not seen how many dams are needed. particularly for the northern sector, the 3 regions, because that is what is the focus for now. How many dams are needed? How many of them are already there? So that we now know that there are existing ones, you'll be dredging them, and then you'll be adding to the existing ones. How many are going to be added this year? We also appreciate that building a dam is a capital-intensive project. It may not necessarily, you may not necessarily be able to do that within 1 year, but we need to know, when are we starting the dams? How many are supposed to be completed this year? How many will be continued subsequently? All these things need to be given to us, you know, and the market system, the marketing is just a huge constraint, because you produce in anticipation of the market. And the fact that agricultural produce are bulky, they are perishable, you cannot gamble with it. If you go into maize production, as they want to support, and the anticipating is that 30% growth, increase in maize production, and you produce, say, 500 maize, bags of maize, where are you going to store it?
Okay.
Because it requires that you need a whole huge warehouse to do that.
Okay.
And within 4 months, you can produce that maize.
Okay. Now, Charles, you touched on, we've heard your take on this whole bit. We've touched about what should be done to ensure that this policy comes up smoothly. Now, one specific bit you both have mentioned is marketing.
Yeah.
Now, even before the process starts, Edward mentioned the ECOWAS market, he touched on school feeding. Is this a reality? Should government, or probably the Ministry of Agriculture, meet with stakeholders to address the bit about marketing once and for all? Can this be tackled once and for all?
Thank you. I think it's possible. It's possible, but what we've seen in the past is for us to put out these policies. We sit in our various ministries, design how it should be rolled out, leaving the farmers out. So at the end of the day, you go to the grassroots, try to implement, and it doesn't work. Let's take NAFCO, National Food Buffer Stock Company, that was introduced some years back. The essence of that policy was to ensure that anytime there is excess, the NAFCO is able to absorb the excess, and during the lean season or when there is shortage, they release that into the market to stabilize the prices. But it never worked, because even after designing the policy and going to do the implementation, the stakeholder, the real people who are supposed to benefit from this policy, were not aware. It was middlemen that were used to actually do the purchasing, to carry the products. NAFCO didn't have the capacity, the infrastructure was not there. There were no warehouses, there were nothing. And it's the same fear I'm still anticipating with this, because we put a whole lot of things there, but we've not actually done proper mapping, proper consultation to get the actual program on the ground. Because we talk about one village, one dam, which I think is fantastic. I try to regress expenditure on GDP to see how it's growing, doing some small trend analysis. And then I also took other factors like climate change, how climate change was also impacting on GDP. And I realized that any year that we have higher rainfall, then agriculture contribution to GDP rather increases. Now the trend shows that even there are years that we increase our expenditure on agriculture, but because we have limited water, agriculture performance went down. For instance, if you take 2008, we have our agriculture growth to be 7.4 to that of GDP. The rainfall pattern was 1,276 millimeters that year. Now you take the year 2010, the rainfall, the total quantity of rains that we got was 995. And then agriculture growth was 2.3. Meanwhile, the same 2010, our total expenditure to the agriculture sector was 9.8%. So our focus in the past has been just increase expenditure on agriculture sector, but we are not actually tackling the real issues on the ground. What are the real issues if you want to plan for food and jobs and address marketing? First, you have to identify yourself with the farmers. What are their main concerns that they are not able to play this role? In years where we have good rainfall, farmers are able to produce enough. The quality seems to be a problem in those years. so they don't get market. So the following year, they tend to relax. In years where there is market and the rainfall is no good, you are not able to supply the market. So for you to be able to balance these two, you need to first address the issue of the weather. You need to address the needs of the farmers in terms of their access to credit, their access to extension services, their access to quality seed, their access from market. That's looking at the feeder rules that links the farm gates to the market. Now, when you are able to identify these issues, you look at the quality. What kind of product are consumers interested in? What kind of products are industries looking for? There are several examples to show that there are occasions where we've been able to support farmers to produce, but at the end of the day, their products are rejected by the market. We are talking about reducing the import bill. Let's take rice, for instance. Today, we are thinking that our production of rice is not enough. I agree that it doesn't meet the quantity that we are looking for. But even the small that we've been able to produce, processors are not interested. Take Asachari. We were there last 3 weeks, and we have a pile of paddy rice. We asked the farmers, the processors are not interested because they say when they mill, it breaks. You go to Nasia, the rice project there, we have the same story. So what are we doing about quality?
Okay. Now, one bit is that government has come up with this policy, and you are major, you both, or the organizations you represent are major stakeholders. Have you in any way met with government, or you're waiting for government to meet you on these specifics that you've mentioned, because you are the men on the ground and you know what happens?
Well, at different levels. We first know this is the government policy, and then we look at the challenges with it, and then we too can go to government. We don't expect government to come to us, but you can't go to government without seeking audience from them, and then they accepting the audience. So we have proposed all that to meet them. And the major thing about is that it's not just about good policy, it's about the implementation. So the question is to get government to look at the implementation seriously, because it is easier for one or two people or few people to make a very nice policy. But when it comes to implementation, the stakeholders are many and varied, and may not, be aware of the motive behind the policy. Every policy has got its hidden motive, and then it is only when you know that you can get committed. So
hidden motive as in a positive side of it?
No, what do you
negatives you mean?
No, positive. What do you want to use it for?
Okay.
And then to solicit the commitment of the implementers.
Okay.
And those who are going to implement, the stakeholders are many, more than those who are preparing the budget. So the policy has come, it's good, it's looking fantastic. Now, one will also say that because of the one district, one factory, and then this is situated in the localities where agricultural production will be taking place, then it will process the output that will come from agriculture. But you see, they don't directly align because it takes a longer time to set up the factories. And we have been told by the Minister of Trade when he was being vetted that, there's a gestation period which is quite long to get the factories built. Before the gestation period for a factory elapses, you would have produced so much. And you see, because it is for food and jobs, they have selected food crops. And that is the major subsector of the agriculture sector. Now, to increase production there. So when it performs well, the entire effect on the agriculture sector will be effective. But it could also be negative in the sense that within 4 months, the production will have taken place. And yet the market that you need to create, the processing system that you need to create will still be in progress. And there will be a disconnect.
Okay.
Now, and when you have a glut, that is the major thing. And we have experienced it before. It isn't that there has never been oversupply in this country. There is. And any moment you hear about oranges getting rotten, tomatoes getting rotten, maize is lying there, farmers have produced and they cannot harvest. It tells you that there is a lack between supply and then demand.
Okay. Now, Charles.
Yeah, I wanted to just, whether we've consulted the government. I think my association, Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana, had an interesting discussion with the Agriculture Minister about planting for food and jobs. And then we looked at one crop that we want to help them implement that in this 2017. Because we want to show a success story and tell them that if you do it this way, it works. So we proposed sorghum. You know, sorghum is a nutritional crop for people in the northern Ghana, and it also serves as a cash crop because Guinness Ghana Brewery continue to import sorghum because they are not getting the quantities and the quality that they need in Ghana. So first had a discussion with Guinness Ghana, who said they were ready to buy any quantity that the farmers will produce. So the farmers were excited because if you go to the Trade Northern region, for sorghum it does very well. So if we create the environment for them, it will be they'll be able to supply. So the Agriculture Minister actually saw a positive attitude. He received us very well.
Now, the point I wanted to make is that you're different stakeholders representing several organizations in the country. From what Edward mentioned, the understanding hasn't gone down well. What are you doing to come as a uniform or as one front to deal with government side by side in making sure that, yes, indeed, this policy is a success?
I think we communicate.
Is it possible?
It's possible. You see, we communicate very well. If you listen to Kariwe very well, the issues he's raising are not too different.
Because you're just two out of a whole.
No, but as of the whole, we are all targeting one beneficiary. He is working with General Agricultural Workers Union. They are supposed to provide services in terms of extension, other information to the farmers. And we are the real farmers. So before we even make any proposal to government, we make sure that we also communicate to other people who are working with farmers. So whatever we are proposing will not necessarily be contrary to what other stakeholders are looking at. So that's what we are doing.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I have been speaking this afternoon to Edward Kairah, General Secretary, Gov't, and also Charles Nyaba, Programs Officer, Peasant Farmers Association. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.